Vice Mayor Phelps?
Here.
Mr. Ping?
Here.
Mr. Bateman is present via Zoom. Welcome, everyone. With us tonight, we have our Director of Finance, Mark Medler. Our Assistant City Manager, Corey Wright, is in the building. City Manager, Dave Kennedy. City Solicitor, Joe Braun. And Lieutenant Spock is our Sergeant at Arms tonight. Former council members Todd Osborne and Pat Mays are here tonight. So welcome, everyone. And with that, we should probably make it official with Mr. Wright.
Good evening, everybody. As Mayor said, this is the first meeting for Corey Wright. He's the city's new Assistant City Manager. He's joined tonight by his wife, Kathy, his daughter, Maddie, who I've already met before, and Alex, his son. Remember, we met before you on your way to basketball game. So just real quick background. Corey began his career with the Clermont County Planning Department, where he was able to learn the basics, zoning, subdivision planning reviews, which I personally think is a great foundation for getting into the business that Corey and I chose to get into. It really teaches you sort of the root of what makes a city tick. He stayed with Clermont County for 3 years until he was hired to work for Union Township as their planning director. A few years later, in 2008, Corey was promoted to be the Assistant Township Administrator. The timing of this new position and getting to work alongside Ken Geis, if any of you have ever met Ken, I've known Ken for many years. He was able to be a part of a significant growth period in that township. A lot of it commercial office, and of course you oversaw a lot of residential development too. Getting the ability to work under someone like Ken, I think, is really the foundation of what Corey has done, and I know he'll say that. I happen to know Ken for many, many years. And in Union Township, under Ken's and Corey's leadership, they're very aggressive. It's sort of the art of the deal that we all heard about they were able to really put together really interesting packages, TQL, on and on and on. And they were through TIFs and JEDs and all the other tax incentives that make tick. If I had to do a JED today, I probably, and Corey didn't work, he'd be the first person I would call, because I think he's written a book on that and he's not going to admit it. But those are important techniques that go into that we now have working for the city. When we look at the revitalization of the Loveland Madeira Road corridor, critical. Where will that be 10 years from now? And we look at, everyone realizes just how important our Commerce Park is to this city's finances. Everyone realizes that. To have someone who knows the tools, can work together, is willing to learn everything, and that's a real, truly benefit to this city. I think it is. I think that his skill set will be well utilized for this city as we enter this phase. The comprehensive plan speaks of what the city wants to do. We're going to take action tonight on some things related to the Loveland Madeira Road corridor. I think in summary, Corey brings with him experience, tons of contacts, which is important, and a reputation as an honest, hardworking guy. I think he is someone that will serve the city well for many years to come. So, Corey, congratulations.
Just to add on to that, I cannot tell you how many comments I've heard from fellow mayors in Clermont County and other elected officials about how lucky we are to get Corey and all. How did you get him? What a good get that was. So really, we cannot overstate how lucky we are to have you and how grateful we are that you chose to come to Loveland. We're really excited to have you.
Thank you.
All right, let's do it.
All right.
Do you like? I'll let you do it. I state your name.
I, Corey Wright,
Solemnly swear that I will
solemnly swear that I will
support the Constitution of the United States,
support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Ohio,
the Constitution of the State of Ohio,
and the Charter and ordinances
and the Charter and ordinances
of the City of
of the
Loveland,
City of Loveland,
and will obey the laws thereof,
and will obey the laws thereof,
and will faithfully discharge the duties
and will faithfully discharge the duties
of Assistant City Manager
of Assistant City Manager
upon which I am about to enter.
upon which I am about to enter.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. It is an absolute honor and privilege for me to come to the City of Loveland. After, I think, and I'll be very brief, I'm just extraordinarily excited to be here. The city spent the better part of 10 years here, I believe, in growing up, high school and college, and went away for a little while, and now I get to come back. So it's sort of a homecoming of sorts, and I'm super excited to join your team and to be able to contribute. And I'd love to thank my wife, Kathy, for being supportive and of me in this, and my kids for showing up tonight. So thank you. Really excited for the opportunity. Thank you.
You're right. Let's do a picture, Jen.
Oh.
142, Corey.
What's that? All right. You need someone to take it.
Sure. Will you send those to me?
We'll give you a second to clear out. You don't want to be here for the rest of this.
There you go. All right.
Graders.
Well, you all don't have to stay either unless you want to. Oh, well, then you might as well stay. All right. Very good. Glad to have you. All right. Open forum. We have Diane Bomar. Diane Bomar. It is a delay. It's weird.
It's on? Yes? Okay. Good evening. My name is Diane Bomar. I live at 709 Deer Trail Court in Corey's old stomping grounds, Miami Township. I would like to take a minute to address some confusion online with commentary about the new firehouse. As anyone who has been in or near the intersection of 48 and Loveland Avenue knows, if you are caught while an emergency vehicle is exiting the current fire hall or trying to get back into one of the bays after a call, it is a challenge. Not only are non-emergency vehicles impacted, but the response calls can be affected by delays in leaving the fire hall due to jockeying of vehicles when there are multiple subsequent runs and the proximity to a busy intersection. With the new property on East Loveland Avenue, the Central District Fire Hall will be in more complete compliance with safety protocols regarding pull-through bays, which this property is large enough to accommodate. I believe that the investments in the LSFD and city are making with this new station will enhance the overall safety of the historic district. The fact that an entire commercial block, which still exists as it does today, is thanks to the immediate and dedicated actions of Chief Huber, members of the department itself, and Councilman Ping, who worked to stabilize buildings after the devastating fire. This should give us tremendous confidence that this next step will be a welcome and important one. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next is review and approval of minutes from the March 8th, 2022 meeting. Are there any corrections, additions to those minutes? Can we have a motion to approve the minutes as written?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Mr. Kennedy? Designation. Which is it? Oh, you're right. We're just doing that. All right, Brad, go ahead and read that ordinance the first, second time.
Ordinance amending
Okay.
section 111.14B of the codified ordinances of the city of Loveland to adjust rates paid to the city employees for special events.
We talked about this last time. Is there anything you want to add, Mr. Kennedy?
No, ma'am.
Does anybody have any questions? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Ordinance 25 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
Now, Mr. Kennedy.
So, council, before you is a resolution which would designate Tim Burke as the city's agent for a petition of annexation of 101 acres of land located between O'Bannonville and State Route 48 into the city limits. Real quick history. This particular piece of property, which was purchased by the Clermont County Park District from the Grail a few years ago, was utilized. The park district utilized Clean Ohio funding. Why is it relevant? Well, it's relevant because, and to the point where I actually included the deeds in my memo, because by using Clean Ohio funding to purchase the property from the Grail, the 101 acres of land, it assures that for this city's sake, it will be a perpetual park space. It's actually in the deeds. So that is something I think would be a real comfort to the city. We've been talking about this annexation for some time, but why it didn't happen? Because the city, by the Ohio Revised Code, we cannot annex land unless it's contiguous to other parcels of land. So it was not contiguous to the city until at such time as the other portion, the Grail property, was annexed in. So by the Grail property being annexed in, that paved the way for the city to be able to now annex in the 101 acres from the Clermont County Park District. This, just for fun facts, because it will be park space for as long as any of us will ever be around. We currently have 147 acres of park space in the city. This will take our total with this annexation to 248 acres, an increase of 68% will our park space. If you take our total open space, which is undeveloped land that the city owns, plus our park space, that's 313 acres. That will now increase to 414 acres, a total of 33% increase. I don't have a wealth of knowledge of really anything, but I will tell you that in my prior job, I was able to purchase a tremendous amount of property using very similar dollars after the 1997 Ohio River flooding. And I can tell you that the deeds that were written up before any property was purchased, those restrictions, that in perpetuity that we did, mirrors exactly what the Park District. And I can tell you that is ironclad for the city to know that land will forever be a park. This, my personal opinion, this is a real home run for the city for very limited resources. This park not only is a park spaces, it'll park spaces that will be owned and operated and maintained by the Clermont County Park District. So why are we here? Well, do we have to declare an agent, which is per the Ohio Revised Code, because of any, we have to make sure that there's no issues with our agent, and with that and the fact that our city solicitor also represents other communities, we went out and utilizing Manley, Burke, and Fisher Tim Burke to be this agent for that. So we have to formally go through the process of designating Tim as our agent. If the city adopts this, I want to go back just real quickly because I couldn't help but throw a picture in my memo of what the county's plans are for this property. And Jeff Torbeck, he's the new Clermont County Park Director who replaces Chris Klingman, who I've known since 1990. I just thought it was interesting when I asked him about the parkland that they're going to put, and I don't do this typically, but I'm just going to read something. This is from Josh to me. Dave, we're looking to utilize sustainable practice such as green roofs, stormwater management practices, renewable energy, etc. Keeping sustainability as a priority for the park. The park will provide outdoor classroom options, natural play areas, and what we're calling pods or hubs with electric and Wi-Fi. The goal is to provide a natural setting for people to work outside, for students to meet for group projects, and for parents to work from home while their kids play. That's what the plan is for the park. It's going to be a myriad of open spaces with some pods. Why are they even annexing in? I'm sure you're asking. Well, the city does have a pretty ironclad rule that if you're going to utilize our water services, there will be one sole building with restrooms to utilize our water service. So we're really excited about this addition to this city and to the total park service. If City Council passes this resolution, we will begin moving forward with the petition. Then I will be back in front of City Council doing the next step, which is we show the services to be provided. This generates no tax revenue to either party, to the city or the township. We'll do this as a type 2 annexation, meaning it will remain whole within the town. It'll also be in the township. The township will gain nothing from a park tax, just as the city. City will only gain from a small water usage bill. So we'll be back at some point with that. I'd say the full annexation should probably be brought back after the Clermont County Commissioners meet, maybe sometime in early May.
All right. Any comments or questions? Mr. Butler?
Yeah, Dave, I'm wondering, I mean, this all looks really great, the layout and the drawing. What, if any, authority will the city of Loveland have in terms of final approval of design, or do we have any? Is it all going to be in the hands of Clermont County?
I don't know that they're so limited to what they can use it for. It's in terms of very limited amount of structures, unless they're open face shelters or restrooms. I really don't know.
Okay.
Sometimes I like to have answers for everything. I might have to just ask Josh if the park board would have any input on this. I do know they asked me to write a letter of support for some grant funding they're going after. So I know that they're way down the road on that, but I'll get back to you shortly.
Well, I know we've got some time. You'll let us know.
Yeah, I'll talk to Josh.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I guess, Mr. Kennedy, my question to follow up Mr. Butler's is, are we going to see, 25 or 30 soccer fields and 10 baseball fields on this, or is this going to be more of a natural park?
It's a very natural open space with these pods and meeting areas. They really envision working with the Loveland City School District to have a place for students to go and to do, like we used to, like old Camp Joy back when I was young, being able to do those kind of events. And the Wi-Fi is going to allow people to get out. I think we all know that working from home isn't going to end anytime soon. And I think you're going to see more and more people up there. But I don't envision any recreational use at least my conversations with Josh. There wouldn't be any recreation. It's just open space, pods, meeting areas, Wi-Fi's, and a ton of places for you to go as a group. HOAs could meet up there, obviously schools. So it's really low usage.
Okay. Thank you.
Vice Mayor?
Yeah, it's encouraging to see this happening. Obviously, we're increasing our green space materially in this annexation. And I just, think that when people have been speaking about the Grail and the Grail property and what the Grail owners have done, there's been a great deal of, I think, negative thought about it because it's all development. Well, it isn't. Here's 100 acres that, in their wisdom, they decided to sell and transfer to the park board, and it will remain in perpetuity. So, to the extent people have said honoring the Grail in terms of it being a open area and a green space, it's being done by this.
Yes.
Any other comments? All right, and read the resolution, please.
Resolution designating agent for filing of annexation petition pursuant to Ohio Revised Code 709.023 and authorizing all further actions related to said annexation.
Any comment on the legislation? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Butler.
Yes.
Mr. Hart.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps.
Yes.
Mr. Ping.
Yes.
Mayor Bailey.
Yes.
Mr. Bateman.
Yes.
Mr. Blair.
Yes.
Resolution 26 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
Mr. Wright?
Thank you, Mayor Bailey. This evening, there's an item on the agenda for the One Ohio Settlement Region 2 regional governance structure. A little bit by way of background. Previously, Council adopted an ordinance in August of 2021 participating in the One Ohio's opioid settlement agreement. That was a settlement with three large manufacturers, AmerisourceBergen, Cardinal Health, and McKesson. And that ordinance authorized participation in the agreement. From this point, we're now being asked, because the agreement created several regions throughout the state. These regions are basically a sub-governance structure. Each region has their own governance structure and contribute back to a state foundation. The state foundation has regional funding policy decisions that they make, and each region would contribute to that. The MOU structure provides for the state foundation to allocate to these regional foundations throughout the state. Hamilton County is its own specific region, so it's region number 2. They are asking that the participating communities within that region affirm, vis-a-vis the resolution or legislation here, to affirm the governance structure. So the governance structure, what is that governance structure? It's provided in the packet, in the memorandum. Several representatives from the county. There is a small city mayor, township trustee, some educator, business leader, hospital representative, just kind of a wide swath of representatives throughout the community that they will appoint. And so there's no impact to the city, no fiscal impact in this regard, because you're just authorizing participation in or affirming the governance structure. But I guess the recommendation here would be to approve the presented legislation in order to continue the next steps. So,
All right, thank you. Any comments or questions? Mr. Butler?
Yep. So Corey, the list of, I think it's 18 individuals, there's about 6 or 7 of those who we know today who those people are. The rest will be identified at some later date?
Yeah, I believe so, sir. Yes.
Okay. So it's just like small city mayor, that could be Mayor Bailey, or it could be the mayor of Milford, or, well, not Milford because it's not Clermont, the mayor of Montgomery.
But it could be, small, whatever the qualification for that.
Okay.
Would be. Yes, sir.
And then with this governing board, it would not have jurisdiction over the amount of dollars that each community will get, but it would have some authority over how it could be used, or...
So there's really 2 parts. So I believe, and we went through this at Union Township as well, is that none of the communities know what their funding allocation is going to be. To this point, we're just kind of being led along, and it was actually really complex in the sense that the funding was tied to how the percentage of communities that participate and a whole bunch of other things. They have not released any of that information to date. This governing structure, as I understand the MOU, there will be some additional set aside for these regional policies, some regional funding, regional projects, and those regional governance structures would help make those decisions, and then would also contribute a member back to the statewide foundation, which also has, I would guess, a significant funding allocation from the overall settlement as well. So.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor?
Corey, has the settlement been achieved already?
So,
or is it in the process still?
And again, and Mr. Braun was intimately involved with that. So I guess the answer is yes, sort of. The settlement has been signed. The participation agreements have been entered into, and I think there are various communities that were kind of led along throughout the state. There was a lot of activity in kind of the summer of 2021 with the opioid settlement. I know I was involved with that in my prior position, kind of getting the race to get the affirmation to participate. So in essence, I think the settlement has been inked, but they haven't finalized the funding allocations yet. So,
Any other comments or questions? All right, read the resolution, please.
Resolution approving the regional governance structure established pursuant to the One Ohio Opioid Settlement Memorandum of Understanding and authorizing participation in the 1 Ohio, Region 2, governance structure.
All right, any comment on the legislation? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Hart,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps,
Yes.
Mr. Ping,
Yes.
Mayor Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Bateman,
Yes.
Mr. Blair,
Yes.
Mr. Butler.
Yes.
Resolution 27 is adopted by a vote of 7 to 0.
Mr. Kennedy?
There was a revised memo and legislation for this in front of you. So the Clermont County Parks Improvement Grant, some years back, because they spoke here, Clermont County was able to pass a park levy. And to their credit, they took a portion of that park levy fund and developed a community parks improvement grant program, which the city has been very fortunate. Let's back up real quick. We have two parks that would be eligible in Clermont County, obviously, McCoy Park and Nisbet. Through that program, the city was able to complete some significant improvements to McCoy Park, to the point we've sort of wrapped it up and put a little bit of a bow on it, along with some other funding we were able to receive. And the goal was to begin to focus on Nisbet Park for some improvements in that park. And when the program just recently came out with a due date at the end of the month, I went and met with the Parks and Rec Committee at a meeting. We discussed this and looking over what's eligible programs, the consensus amongst the committee, and I think the Park and Rec Board, and I think rightfully so, was that you can't always just fit a square peg into it, and that we shouldn't just do a program because it meets the grant requirements, but then goes against the Nisbet Park plan. So with that, we decided to focus on something that is eligible, and not only could be eligible for Nisbet, but also for McCoy, which would be the installation of AEDs, automatic defibrillators. Outdoor automatic defibrillators, as opposed to, for example, the one back in that corner, it's a whole different ball of wax in the sense that it has to be wired, it has to be in a climate controlled environment, and they can be expensive. We have one so far installed by the town clock. Along the bike trail, we are doing a third arrangement with the Clermont, with the city's youth soccer and youth baseball. Will be one installed up at Phillips Park here very soon. Good, considering the number of kids that play up there. And with that in line, we thought, well, this would be a great opportunity to add one to McCoy and Nisbet for basically 25 cents on the dollar. So Mike Books from LSFD, who get all the quotes together, and we were ready to go when it was pointed out to me by Chief Huber that these outdoor AEDs automatically call our comm center, the city's comm center. And in a perfect situation, we have a camera that leads them right to that AED. For example, there is one, as we all know, that does in the downtown. So it was a great opportunity to throw that into the park program. Into the park grant. Add this safety device to two parks that are well used in the city, climate controlled AEDs with cameras automatically calling our comm center. Again, it's also important that to our safety service personnel that they're always using the same ones. City Hall staff, for example, was just trained on that unit here in the building, and they are really something. And they have been so streamlined that just about anyone can save a life with these devices. So with that, what we're recommending is a total project price, which includes the camera, of $22,334. We would be asking a grant request of $16,750, and the city would be putting in $5,584. Obviously, the city is very aggressive with grant dollars, and I do feel that this will score well. It certainly meets the safety component, and I think this would be a nice addition to our parks. If it's used once, it's worth every penny that we would ever put into it, and that goes without saying. So one life is saved with one of these AEDs. We're getting a $22,000 project at $5,000 out of city money. And if we save one life, this is really a win-win. So that's all I had on that one, Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Blair?
Thank you, Mayor. So Mr. Kennedy, at this point, we're just applying for the grant.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
But because traditionally I don't have to come ask you every time we apply for grants, but I traditionally do when I'm asking you to commit a local match such as this. And it also looks good to put in the application that you all supported it. So if you read it, and also if you read the legislation, Clermont County likes us to acknowledge that it's a reimbursement style grant. What does that mean? We pay for everything, send them the receipts, and they cut us a check. Some are one way, some are the other ways. They feel it's important that municipalities know it, so it's actually in the language.
Any other questions? Vice Mayor?
Is this, Mr. Kennedy, something that we set it up and forget about it in terms of, is there maintenance that needs to be?
LSFD maintains all of them. They maintain this one.
Okay.
Yep. They're wonderful about that. Yep.
All right. Any other comments, questions? All right. I do believe we have a red line version of the resolution, so we do need a motion to amend the resolution consistent with the red line version at the table. Someone care to make such a motion?
I'll move to vote on approval of the red line version of the resolution authorizing the city manager to submit a community parks improvement grant application to Clermont County Park District.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Call the roll, please.
Vice Mayor Phelps,
Yes.
Mr. Ping,
Yes.
Mayor Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Bateman,
Yes.
Mr. Blair,
Yes.
Mr. Butler,
Yes.
Mr. Hart.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Read the resolution, please.
Resolution authorizing the city manager to submit a 2022 Community Parks Improvement Grant application to the Clermont County Park District.
All right. So call the roll on the resolution as amended.
Mr. Ping,
Yes.
Mayor Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Bateman,
Yes.
Mr. Blair,
Yes.
Mr. Butler,
Yes.
Mr. Hart,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps.
Yes.
Resolution 28 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
Mr. Kennedy?
As everyone knows, and Chief Ray will be retiring from the city on April 4th after many, many years. We have begun the police chief search process, and we're moving along at a pretty good clip. But I will not obviously have a new police chief in place by April 4th. With that, I was able to put some feelers out and reach out to find someone who could help fill in for a little while on an interim basis, specifically to serve as my designated by council as my safety director for the police division, which is very specific in the charter and the city codes on how I can do this, and which goes to council. By nature, the city manager, by the time he got sworn in, whenever he or his, they automatically also assume the role of safety director. With that, that role can be given to someone to take over. In this case, that would be that I'm recommending that is the role. We are very fortunate, and I can't say this enough, that Sue Matson has agreed to serve in this role. For those of you who don't know Sue, she's just absolutely a wonderful person. She's retired as Miami Township police chief. She is one of the most respected people, not just in Clermont County in the police world, but in this part of Ohio. And the fact that she is willing to serve, I think, is a testament to her. And I can't thank our city solicitor for helping that put together. I would not have done that on my own. I didn't even go there. Consensus people are saying, how the heck you pull that off? One local police chief told me, your only problem with bringing her on as interim basis, you're not going to want to see her leave. She's going to Italy in July, and she made that very clear with her mother, and she told me to tell me that her mother told me, make sure I knew that she's got a trip in July. We'll have a police chief before then. Sue is going to fill in. We're going to see that range from about 25 to 40. I do anticipate her sitting at the council meetings, and she will jump in with both feet. Anyone who knows Sue, she's going to jump in with both feet. So that buys us some time as we work our way through that. There's a slight amendment. Original resolution, I had it starting on the same date as Chief Ray was leaving, and it made both Chief Ray and Sue Matson felt a week of overlap would really be beneficial to everyone. So that's why I modified it to a start date of March 28th, which is next Monday. And she will serve as the safety director for the police division until such time as a police chief is put in place. I would anticipate, if at all possible, another week or so of overlap, and Sue will be off to Italy. There's a lot of benefits to this. Sue isn't applying for the job. Sue is just wants to help the city out. Again, that's about it. Thanks again, Joe. I really do appreciate that for helping us find her. So I don't. I'm up for questions, but it's a good find for the city.
Anybody have any questions, comments? Mr. Butler?
And I would address this to Mr. Braun. Joe, we've got a provision that Ms. Madsen will serve as an independent contractor, which I think is appropriate, and then an indemnification provision. Do you have any concern that as an independent contractor, if there were to be some sort of litigation or some sort of liability allegation, certainly hope it doesn't happen, but if Ms. Madsen during her service, will that allow her to be, access the city's insurance coverage and so forth?
So, I may I answer that?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, we do have an insurance provision. She has $2 million of coverage, which is actually probably better than most policies would cover for her work. Because she's a safety director, I should point out that one of the key distinctions is she will not be patrolling and she will not be carrying a firearm unless she gets recertified as a police officer, which she may do. And that's why she did the $2 million in coverage. If you note, it doesn't actually provide a blanket indemnification. It is statutory indemnification. Where is that in there? Yep. It's in paragraph 10.
Right.
That's the same indemnification you provide to me as an independent contractor as well, which means it only provides the indemnifications that statute demands we provide. Everything else would come from her policy.
Okay.
So I do feel comfortable with it, and I actually spoke to her insurance agent, and he also assured me that the city of Loveland's been named as an additional insured on the policy, so I have no concerns that the city will be protected.
Very good. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Dave's right. Mr. Braun brings a lot to the table, but one of the things he really helps us out with is all his contacts throughout the 3 counties that he serves in the various communities. And this was one of those times that was invaluable. So thank you, Mr. Braun. All right, we also have a red line version of this resolution, so we need a motion to amend the resolution consistent with the red line version. Vice Mayor.
A motion to amend the resolution consistent with the red line version of this appointing of Sue Madsen to safety director.
Is there a second?
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Read the resolution, please.
Resolution appointing Sue Madsen to serve as the safety director for the police division, authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement for services.
All right. Call the roll on the resolution as amended.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Resolution 29 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
All right. Mr. Kennedy?
So, at your last council meeting, March 8th, City Council passed legislation authorizing me to execute an agreement to purchase 106 East Loveland Avenue, also known as the mobile gas station, that-a-way, over there, next door. That agreement to purchase has been executed by both parties, myself and the owner of the mobile gas station. So now as we move forward at a relatively quicker pace to get all the funds up in line, I had mentioned on March 8th that we intended to use the recreational TIF funds for this purchase. Very brief, the recreational TIF is the land on Butterworth Road, bounded by Butterworth Road and State Route 48, across from Brandywine and adjacent to the Butterworth Glen subdivision. The city was the landowner of about 40% of that property. The city's property and the adjacent crane farm next to it was all within the TIF boundaries, roughly 26.8 acres of land that the city purchased. City secured bond funding for that acquisition of that property and put the whole land into a TIF. That TIFs are only really successful when development has occurred. Thus, it basically gets tax revenues begin to come in. That property has sat dormant. Therefore, the city has not received any funding. So when we sold the property, by us selling the Crispin farm, as we called it, that helped facilitate the Crane farm. The one couldn't be done without the other. Actually, the Crane farm was inaccessible without the city selling our property. With that, and this council, I believe, is to be commended wholeheartedly, we held our ground and waited until we got a very high quality product, including extending the sanitary sewer main up there. With that in line and a better product, the city was able to sell our portion of the property, which conversely meant the adjacent property. Our city sale price for that was $350,000. We received in 2021. I knew at that point in time that we were beginning to have interest in the mobile gas station. I knew that the mobile gas station, we expressed to council, could be utilized to improve traffic on State Route 48. We asked Mark to put the money into the recreational TIF fund, but hold the $350,000 upon which the city could begin. If you recall, we began interest in the mobile station early through June of 2021. So with that, and now we're moving forward, we have the $350,000 in the TIF, in the recreational TIF fund, which we need $90,000 transferred from the general fund. Key here is it's an advance, not a transfer. The difference is, yes, you're transferring the money. The money will get paid back by the recreational TIF as it begins to generate money. Quick summary on the projected revenues of the recreation land TIF. When it gets geared up and it's moving at a pretty good clip, we stand to average $154,000 in TIF revenues over the course of the remaining 15 years of that TIF. Comes out to just a little over $2 million. That $2 million in funding can easily pay back the debt service that the general fund has covered during the time it was dormant, can easily pay back the $90,000, can help contribute towards the purchase of the mobile station. Now, what will it do in terms of projects? Corey will be working, and together we're going to be hopefully securing funds to remove the structure and the canopies. We are very well aware of the tank issues that we went into it fully open-minded about the tank issues next door. But one of the beauties of being a city government, between Buster and the Petroleum Enterprise Funds, there are funds available that we will utilize to completely and totally clean the property up, including the tanks. I would anticipate that the turn lane, which is a relatively inexpensive project because it is all level ground, will be part of the 2023 road program. I don't see the recreational TIF sending money back to the road program in all due honesty. How would I ever know the exact amount? And let's be honest, as Corey pointed out today when we were talking, TIFs benefit other areas in the town. So at this point in time, we feel that this revenue will be generated. So this legislation, and when I wrote this, I was hoping I could do it under 2 readings, but I'm not going to be able to get it done because we have a closing date coming. This revenue, this establishes the 440 in the rec TIF by the 350 that we have in there, and the 90,000 we're moving over from the general fund as an advance. That will put all the funds in line, which will allow the director of finance able to make the closing. So I just thought it was important to touch a little bit on what sort of got us here and how the recreational TIF plays into all of this. So it's a moving around of dollars. It's all in the same kitty. It's just from an auditing standpoint, it's what Mark needs to close the deal. And by you seeing that advance, you know that 90,000 has to go back to the general fund.
All right. Any comments or questions? Mr. Blair.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Kennedy, in a previous discussion, we talked about the remediation of the tanks underlying that property, and we're not to a decision where we're making the final decision on that tonight, right?
No. I've had numerous 2 conversations with Buster. Buster is the Bureau of Underground Storage Tank Removal, and I've also met with and spoke with the Petroleum Compensation Fund, of which the Petroleum compensation fund is a massive insurance policy, because at the end of the day, the state government, the Petro and Buster, they want the tanks removed. They know that if the city manager would come back to you all and say, I thought it over, and I don't think you should buy this because you're going to have to deal with these tanks. That doesn't do the overall good any good, because we know that the property owner is just going to let them stay. So with that in mind, and the foundation that the state wants these removed, we have multiple funds to access. Most importantly, the key to this, which really made this a viable purchase, is that the current property owner has maintained his, basically, we would call it premium payment into the petroleum fund. On the day the property is transferred, that petroleum fund will be transferred to the city of up to $1 million in expenses that the city can tap in to make sure that all of those tanks are properly disposed of. There's not going to be any just let's throw down some pavement at 2 o'clock in the morning and hope nobody sees us. That was part of what we hope to do and do this right. We know this because we had a monitoring well in front of City Hall. So we're doing this full transparency. But I do believe, based on where the tanks are located, that we can even move forward with the turn lane portion of the project. But the goal is, and the funding is in place, will be in place, and the support of the state that we do a complete cleanup of that property.
They'll come out of the ground.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
The leaking tank will come out of the ground.
Yeah.
The in some cases, the existing tanks, when pressure tested and shown not to leak, they'll recommend they be filled and left in place.
Fit with,
There is a leaking tank over there.
filled with
I don't know.
sand. Okay. That's fine. That's fine.
So it's gonna-
I know that I'm
I
only
think it's
bringing it
sand.
up because I know that there is
I think it's
widespread concern that there be adequate remediation.
Oh,
Mr. Butler.
Yeah, Dave, on page 38, the recommendation, it reads adopt following 2 readings, but we're not doing 2 readings, right? This is an emergency request.
I was hopeful. Yeah, it's the legislation's. It was written as emergency. I should have went back and changed my recommendation. But the 30 days is ticking. We've made the
I understand.
$1,000 earnest check. Now we have to close because we need to move forward. That then starts the 4-month clock that we have going under. Meanwhile, as part of the signature, a part of the city's closing in the agreement, we got what we needed, which was a right of entry form that the county is utilizing for us to get the grant funding to remove the structures. Without the right of entry form, we couldn't be included in the Clermont County grant.
I understand. And,
Yeah.
and I've been pretty open about my issues with emergency ordinances, but I understand time is of the essence in this, and we've got a lot of things that have to be accomplished in a short period of time. So I understand the need for it in this case.
Mr. Braun.
Yeah, and I just want to add, after conversations with Mr. Kennedy and Mr. Wright today, I did go back to my title company to find out when that closing might take place, and they indicated to me it will likely be next week. And in fact, she told me as long as I don't ask her one more time, it'll be next week. So my belief is that the owner will have funds in hand next week. That's, again, part of the reason that we're going to do it as an emergency. We did agree to do it within 30 days. And I will remind everyone, I know Mr. Kennedy spoke about this at the last meeting, that they will continue to operate that business till July 1st. That's part of our agreement with them. And at that point, the city will take possession, even though we will own it before then.
All right. Any other comments, questions? All right. Can you read the ordinance, please?
Ordinance amending Ordinance 2021-106 to make revisions to appropriations for expenditures for the City of Loveland, Ohio during fiscal year ending December 31st, 2022, and declaring an emergency.
Any comment on the legislation? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Ordinance 30 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
Mr. Kennedy?
So most people know that the city operates, controls, permits, regulates all stormwater post and pre-construction within the city through our city engineer, Cindy Kloppenstein, who probably knows it about stormwater management about as well as anybody in the county. The city does that through a permit we have with the Ohio EPA as part of their National Pollution Discharge Elimination Systems. We're what they call an MS4, which is a municipal municipal stormwater management program. There's 4 S's after the end, so they call it an MS4. So when the city originally got their NPDES permit, they developed Section 926 for codified code, and that 926 regulates on a very macro scale how the city monitors and maintains their stormwater management. On a much more micro scale, Cindy's Bible would basically be the Hamilton County stormwater regulations, and that's what she uses for all of her calculations. So in 2021, the EPA modified some of the rules and some of the requirements, which led the city to have to make corresponding changes to Section 926. There really wasn't a lot of room for wiggle in all of this. Cindy met with the Stormwater Commission that approved it. We then took them on to the Law and Ordinance Committee. It was it's a new member, so it was a sort of a first good meeting for them. If there is anything that is relatively important, would be, I think, is one of them is probably the increased volume. The stormwater now has to count for a larger volume, so you'll see corresponding larger pipes and larger storm bases. If you look at the changes, again, many of which Cindy will tell you were already in place in the Hamilton County Stormwater Management Technical book that she uses. A couple of that is outside of the volume, and what you're also seeing is these have began to be very common, right? I don't remember when you all saw the first detention pond in a subdivision, but you can imagine now how many there are throughout the country. Well, what is creeping up? Maintenance, and the city's ability. So what you're seeing is more power, more asking for easements, and the ability for cities to play those roles. And so that's littered throughout here. Another interesting, I thought, reading through all the different changes. There's also sediment settling ponds. So on large projects, and you have a detention pond planned, they realize that a portion of sediment during construction is going to take up space of what the detention pond is going to use at some point in time. So all the calculations had to be based upon your depth of your pond plus what they anticipate how much of it's going to get filled with sediment. They've now decreased that, so that comes into play for smaller projects. There was also sediment barriers. It was really held you only could use certain barriers. Well, people are inventing new barriers, and people have to say, well, it's not, you can't use them. So outside of that, these are just some housekeeping items that keep us up to date with the EPA requirements. I think you saw 2 of your committees work together, your Stormwater Commission and your Law and Ordinance, both review them, both recommending council that after 2 readings, 926 would be amended. And if I don't have technical questions, I can get them from Cindy first thing in the morning.
All right. Any comments or questions, Mr. Butler?
So Dave, all of the changes that we see in these red lines are basically mandated by the Ohio EPA.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
And then the second question, and maybe we need to ask Cindy, and that's fine. We can find that out if that's the case. Do any of these changes compel any additional expenses to the city?
No, it gives us more authority, more power. We have the authority. If you read some of these changes, we can go up and we can charge fees to do inspections of engineering inspections. My former community, which was very, very small, we had an engineer that walked to every, but we didn't have a Cindy. So we can place orders if we see movement, we see any failures. We have a lot more power to fail. I think the greater good in this is not the financial, it's that detention ponds will be better maintained, and not just an HOA said they were going to take care of them and lost interest, and now they're full of cattails and they're not being dug out and they're not maintained. No one's looking at the pipe. The pipe's got a beach ball. We saw a beach ball get clogged at River Ridge Apartments, if you recall. A beach ball caused a massive storm from the River Ridge Apartments on Love Madeira Road. no one was looking at it. So it gives the city more authority. I don't think there's any real expense. The expense, because the water volume will be have to account for more rain. That's going to be on the developer.
Okay.
They're not going to be retroactive. You're not going to be Butterworth Glen isn't going to now have to account for 0.9 inches versus whatever the other one was. So they're all grandfathered in. So
And it gives the city more teeth.
Oh yeah, a lot of
Okay.
teeth now. Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Kennedy, I just want to make sure this applies to private development, residential development, construction development, as well as the city's development, correct?
Yes.
All of this applies across the board, not just Joe Dokes that wants to build a house on a hill.
It applies to everything that has to get a stormwater permit, which is public, private, every
Okay.
project.
Great. I would suggest, if you ever want some great reading, go in and read these stormwater management rules. I know it, but it should act as a great deal of assurance that at the state level, the local level, and in your own neighborhood, there are rules requiring thorough attention be made to stormwater management. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? All right. Let's do the first reading of the ordinance. It's on page 71, I believe. Of the packet.
Ordinance modifying Chapter 926 of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Loveland, titled Construction and Post-Construction Best Management Practices for Stormwater Management.
All right. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Are you ready? This is a special event fee waiver. Are we ready for that?
Oh, that's Misty.
I'll do it.
Is that you? That's on page 95 of your packet.
The Loveland Middle School and Intermediate Schools Parent Teacher Student Association will be holding a 5K race on Saturday, May 7th. It's starting in Nesbitt Park. This is a fundraiser. The funds will be used to provide teacher grants, scholarships, treats and parties, wellness speakers, and more. And they're requesting that council waive the $150 special event application fee. If council wishes to do that, a motion would be appropriate.
Thank you. Any questions? Someone like to make a motion? Vice Mayor?
I move that we vote to waive the fee for the 5K race on Saturday, May 7th, 2022 by PTSA.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any comment? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
I'm not voting. I'm recusing myself.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Motion carries by a vote of 6-0.
All right. Mr. Kennedy, and did you?
Yeah, I'll
Which
just give a
could-
little background. Then I was going to have Mike and Melton and Lisa from Freeman from Parks and Rec add in. I just want to give them a little background. So Hidden Creek Park, which is actually 3 city parcels, is 26.5 acres of land located between Glen Lakes subdivision and the Hidden Creek development. The land is basically the undeveloped portions of the Glen Lake subdivision, was transferred to the city in 1991. I believe from just asking some of the old timers that at one point I believe it was going to be the lake of Glen Lakes subdivision. No, don't know where I heard that. It's not uncommon for undeveloped portions of the city get turned over to the city. It has been turned into a bit of a hidden gem. And at our last Parks and Rec board, and I'd like to ask Mark, and before I finish, Mike and Lisa, to come up and we talked about this at the last Parks and Rec meeting, and it just seemed to really fit, and they asked to speak. And per our codes, they're allowed to come up during the.
Good evening, Council. I'm Lisa Freeman. I'm the Recreation Board Chair. The Recreation Board and the Tree and Environment Committee are asking City Council to change the name of Hidden Creek Park to the West Loveland Nature Preserve. It's come to our attention that many residents don't know that Hidden Creek Park even exists, or that they believe the park is for the residents of the Hidden Creek subdivision exclusively. This 20-acre plus park is an extraordinary natural resource filled with wildlife. It's home to foxes, coyotes, deer, turtles, and, if you'll forgive me, the world's biggest bullfrog. I've lived here for 17 years. I've seen this thing numerous times. It's the size of a toddler. It's made me a believer in the Frogman legend. As well as paved hiking trails, Hidden Creek will have 2 primitive campsites that citizens can register to use for free. If you haven't hiked Hidden Creek before, I encourage you to do so. The park can be accessed from the Glen Lake subdivision on Glen Lake Road and from 2 areas in the Hidden Creek subdivision. Additionally, the Recreation Board and the Tree and Environment Committee are working with Mr. Kennedy to have a small blacktop parking lot off of West Loveland Avenue. The Recreation Board and the Tree and Environment Committee are asking you to consider the request for the name change in the hope that everyone in Loveland will find and enjoy this tranquil yet vibrant gem.
And I just want to add why the name Preserve. We wanted to bring that into play. What a preserve is, and the intent of a preserve is it permits human activity, but it will limit it, and that it will not add to the ecological degradation that we already see occurring. When you walk through Hidden Creek Park, like Lisa says, it looks gorgeous, but it's not healthy. And so we want humans to go there because we want attention on it. We want that attention to turn into focus where people want to make changes to make that park healthy. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of invasive non-native species there, and not a lot of biodiversity. And so we think that this focus, by getting people there because it is hidden, to get people to go there more often, with this new name, but also then the focus on different committees, the Park and Rec Board and the Tree and Environment Committee, to look at it as a preserve. And then we will manage it that way. We'll manage it so that it will benefit the Loveland residents so they use it more, get to walk through it, get to enjoy it, but also to increase the biodiversity, which is the ultimate measure of an ecosystem and environmental health of an area. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody have any comments or questions? Mr. Blair?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Meldon and Ms. Freeman, thank you for bringing this this recommendation to council. That park is truly a hidden gem. I only discovered it because I was nosy a couple of years ago and went down into it and walked it from one end to the other. And oh my gosh. At first, I was reluctant to have it changed because by its very nature, it's a hidden creek. But I think by putting preserve status on it, it will help protect it. My question is, what will that park need in addition to remedying the invasive species situation to make it healthy?
Oh, I was going to say to get people there. First of all, we were talking about the parking lot and redoing the trails. To make it healthy, will be first of all eliminating the invasive non-native species, and then reforestation. A lot of people think that once you eliminate all this honeysuckle or whatever, your job is done. It doesn't just come back. We need to reforest it also. So this would be. Love Our Land, a local organization, and the Tree and Environment Committee are committed to one monthly removing the non-native species. We're removing an area during 1 month. The next month we're going to go back. We're going to reforest the area that we did the previous month, and then remove more also. So this is going to be a long-term project and focus. Does that answer your question?
Yes, and I appreciate the fact that the measure adds parking. That's great. And I think Cindy Kessler, I'm sure, will be involved with her.
Oh, she's with us.
Her gentle touch
She's
on all of that. And I appreciate that. I think, if you've never been down there, have somebody take you, because it's an astonishing, it's an astonishing place. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Mr. Butler?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. You've got parallel East Loveland Nature Preserve, West Loveland Nature Preserve. I think that's a neat thing. I'm trying to visualize where the parking would be. Can you kind of explain that to me?
Yeah, it is. It's when you're coming down, it's McKinney at that point.
Right.
When you're going down the hill, there isn't an entrance for Public Works right now. So where Public Works goes in, yeah. So we would use
Just beyond the bridge.
if you're coming from downtown, it's before the bridge.
Just
Okay.
before the bridge.
After the bridge, that is actually land that's owned by Sims.
Okay.
That's private property.
Private property, yeah. So before that is there's a service entrance that what we're going to do is we're going to move. They have two poles with the, they block it off. I think they already moved them back, right, Dave? We were going to move it back 150 yards. I think they already did that. And then they were going to use the extra leftover blacktop that we do from the streets to put up, I think, 8 spots.
Eight
there.
spots. I was going to ask how many spaces. You're thinking 8?
Yeah, we're thinking about 8. And then right when you'd walk in, there's a lot of green space. There would be a little area with picnic tables and stuff, so you wouldn't even have to go that far in. There's a little, we might have to redo trails and this and that, but be very inviting.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right, anyone else? Mr. Hart?
First of all, I want to commend you guys on your work down there. I know you've been down there working and pulling out stuff, and Lisa had been working on that park, getting attention to that park for a couple years now. So outstanding work. I think the use of West Loveland Nature Preserve, as Mr. Butler said, providing a little, parallel universe there between the east side level and the west side level is a really nice thing to have. My question is about the campsites. Where were you planning on having those located?
So they're already there. They've been there. When you walk, I'm trying to think if you've never been down there. You've been down there. You know where the one is, but it's closest to the Hidden Creek condo spots. It's a large, cleared out area. It is gorgeous. You can, if you go there in the middle of summer, it feels like you're out in the middle of nowhere and you're 100 yards from the condos, but it's very secluded. And then right around the corner, probably 150 yards away, is another spot, open lawn spot, again, all covered in the summer. It hasn't been, it was a spot where there was a picnic bench years ago. I had our Public Works put one again there this week. So these 2 spots, you can go there now. There's garbage cans, picnic tables, and one has a grill and the other one doesn't. And then they both have fire rings. So you're welcome to use those now. You go down there and hang out. You don't have to sign them up. Our goal is to get a sign put down there. People can go to, it'll have a phone number and the website, and people can call the city. And if they want to put a tent up, then they just reserve it for free, but just so we can kind of see who's going to be down there and when they want to use it.
John, if you go from the Glen Lake subdivision
Yeah.
down the stairs,
Yeah.
okay, and then you're going to turn right, and then a
Okay.
pretty quick left.
Yeah,
And they'll
it's
be
really,
fine.
yeah, it's hard to explain.
Dave, is there a? Can we use some of the concrete picnic tables that we have in Nisbet? Maybe throw those down there.
Yeah.
Be a good place for them.
Because I make fun of them, but yes.
They're durable.
We obviously we were going to pull out with the new gazebo. We have some excess the concrete picnic tables which can withstand a nuclear attack, and
Teenage putting them over fires.
yes,
Yeah.
so I'll have to get with you, but there's certainly items. So yes,
Great.
Vice Mayor?
Yeah, having the privilege of living close to that park, I go there quite a bit, and so I'm a little concerned that it's now being found out. But
A lot of people are. Yeah.
that's for the betterment of the city. One thing, I know the invasive species you're talking about, and I applaud you for wanting to attack those. There's also some huge granddaddy trees there.
Oh,
that
yeah.
are enormous on both the riverside and on the Glen Lake side.
Mhm.
But the question I have is, I know there are 2 concrete crossings of the creek that I'm wondering if they're needing some repair as well, because that's maybe a city issue or a stormwater issue.
I spoke with Jason Brock about that, and Jason said that he thought that we might have to look in there's a few culverts down there that need to be replaced because the whole trail, it's on a hillside, and if you've walked it, if you come after rain, you know where the culverts are because it's flooded over. So I think, we were talking about phases of this project. Definitely one of the phases would be to have to look at all the culverts and decide what we want to do with those as a city project. Because they definitely all of them need to be looked at, the whole thing.
Any other comments?
One more. Thank you. You made there's a mention in here in the minutes about putting up trail cameras.
That was yes. We're starting with the Simpson Forest because we're doing this because we've seen vandalism.
Yeah, I mean, if we're going to spend any money on it or do any salvage attempts on that area, there needs to be trail cameras.
Right.
If possible, connect them to the safety center.
So we're going with we got one for I think Dave ordered it this week, or we just talked about last meeting. They will be at the Simpson primitive site now because we've seen the most vandalism there.
Yeah,
and so we got them pretty inexpensively. So we probably move them. The talk was to put them at each primitive site. We'll start there.
We're not arguing with you on
Yeah,
that.
we agree.
We're all for it.
Yeah.
Anyone else? All right, I just want to say thank you both and your committees. This is a perfect example of things that we as a city cannot do without our committees getting involved and coming up with these ideas and putting in the sweat and the work. So this is fantastic. Between this and the dog park, you all have been hitting it out of the park, as they say, these last few months. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we need a motion then, consistent with the recommendation.
I move that we change the name of Hidden Creek Park to West Loveland Nature Preserve.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Hart,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps,
Yes.
Mr. Ping,
Yes.
Mayor Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Bateman,
Yes.
Mr. Blair,
Yes.
Mr. Butler.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. Mr. Kennedy?
I'm sorry about this. Is a bit of a redo. When I brought up the community entertainment district back in 2021, I thought I could wait a little longer so I could bring it in with the comprehensive plan, but I just wasn't able to get it. Next time I looked up, I had missed one of the deadlines, so I needed to bring back the community entertainment district on the Loveland Madeira Road business corridor. Don't want to bother everybody too much detail, but community entertainment district was developed back in 2005 to increase the number of liquor licenses, what they call D5Js, and to use those number of liquor licenses to help develop an area. During the comprehensive plan, it became very apparent that the goals and the futures and the ability to put incentives in place for the redevelopment of Loveland Madeira Road, this could be a tool that could be beneficial. We already have a tax abatement program. The city's already working towards getting grant funding to develop the pedestrian walking trails along Loveland Madeira Road. And so I brought this forward back many years ago. Back in 2015, 2016, we looked at the community entertainment district, but we just couldn't meet the requirements. You'd have $70 million in improvements, but then they changed them to where a landowner, which the city owns Chestnut Street property, which is within the boundaries, and if that landowner is within a city of a population between 7,000 and 20,000 and was incorporated as a village prior to 1880 and is in the same county as another municipal said, that we then could move forward with our application request. Well, our population is 13,145. We were incorporated in 1876, and the city of Sharonville has a community entertainment district called the Northern Lights Community Entertainment District. So the boundaries, we didn't just include land to run up the number. So we didn't include Oasis and obviously the boundaries do not include the school. The boundaries do not include the post office, but it would financially, I don't know if you realize this, but when someone wants a liquor license in a community that has is out over the number for that community, they have to do what's called a TREX, which is an economic TREX. An economic TREX are easy to do, but they'll cost that a landowner or that restaurant owner or that developer approximately $30,000 minimum to get a Trex taken in. So the whole crux of a community entertainment district is having a defined number of what they call D5Js only available within those boundaries for a cost of $2,344, a savings to anybody prospective restaurant entertainment type business coming into the city of $27,000. So this particular said nothing has changed in the application. It's 54.029 acres. I think it mirrors exactly what the comprehensive plan is calling for, which is a total redevelopment of the Loveland Madeira Road business district. We would meet all of the requirements. As we've already been the process of, confirmed this with Joe, reading through all the Ohio Revised Code, the process, and help streamline this because it is a bit of a tight window. Tonight would be both me handing the application to Mayor Bailey, and Mayor Bailey has already recommended approval of the application. So we then can jump all the way to step 3, which is City Council simply sets a public hearing, which could be April 12th. At that point in time, after the public hearing, I then would come back at the meeting in April. I have 75 days from the date of today, meaning from the clock is ticking today. So I have 75 days from today to come back with legislation in between. My application is the mayor saying, fine, council setting a public hearing, us having the public hearing, and me bringing back the legislation all done in 75 days. So we can skip all the way to step 3 because we've already done 1 and 2, and then I can bring back the legislation to council to set that. The said then would then get sent to the liquor control to see if I dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's. And then it just sits dormant. But then, okay, now it sits dormant. Now be futuristic. Someone buys a chunk of Shoppers Haven and wants to put in, I hate doing this because I say the wrong thing, an Applebee's, some kind of regional restaurant, finds out that he's looking at $30,000 to get a Trex in. The city can say, wait a second, you're in a community entertainment district, call the liquor board, they know about it, it'll be called, and you can get one for the minimum price transferred in. That's a tool, just like a tax abatement. We would see that as a tool. So if council, that's where I didn't meet that 75 days because I was hoping that I could slide it in with the comprehensive plan, but I wasn't able to do it. So I'm starting over. And at 54 acres, we would have 10 D5Js. I don't know that we'll ever use 10 D5Js in that boundary, but they would be available. So I don't know if anybody has any questions.
Anybody have any questions, comments? All right, so we need a motion to set a public hearing.
For April 12th.
That's what you're looking for?
I'll move we set a public hearing on April 12th, 2022 at or around 7 p.m. to consider the creation of a community entertainment district along the Loveland Madeira Road corridor.
Second.
Thank you. Call the roll, please.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
All right, Mr. Kennedy.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I was done. I made a commitment, I believe, 2 council meetings ago, I made a commitment that I would try to pick a topic and every other meeting pick a topic and try to expound on the parking facility. So my first topic, which the first one was, I wanted to talk about the land that the city purchased and how I like to think it sort of fits into a master plan. Today, I just wanted to talk about the physical facility design and how it's sort of transformed and some of the changes that we made and how I hope you feel it fits into the environment. So first and foremost, this city, when we went down this road, we reached out to a company called Desmond. And Desmond, I have a friend and he works for a company, all he does is design airports. And it's all he does. this is all Desmond does is do parking garages, and they are the master of parking facilities. We were really lucky, I think, to get them. We did a whole RFP, and they have been wonderful, patient with me, because we've changed a lot of things. But Steve and Maria are pretty much the two I deal with the most, and they truly do specialize in parking consulting. So no matter what anybody, I just want to point out these are really good people, because I'm not the easiest person to work with on this kind of stuff. So I just wanted to talk a little about how it transformed originally, and I don't have a rendering of it, so I just made it look like I did. But originally, the access point into the first level of the garage was going to be off of First Street, right in here. Just for reference, here's the Works rail car, here's State Route 48, here's the creek, here's the power line, so on and so forth. I had an opportunity on a nice warm summer day to walk around with a lot of the residents in this area, and universally, they didn't want that. They did not want more traffic on First Street. So literally within minutes from that meeting, we got on the phone with Steve from Desmond, and he said, Steve, I don't think this is going to work. The residents don't want it. What are your thoughts? And I can actually show you the pencil drawings that he submitted later that day. We were able to move the access point, close up the First Street access point, and move it to the base of the ramp. So it was moved from there to the base of the ramp. That really opened up, and I think you'll see it later, for this area along here to be a large amount of greenery, which I think will even help with the headlights. So that was one of the early changes in how the parking facility, the design of the parking facility. So what's this weird cutoff here? This happened, I'm going to say, in October of 2021. The city is required to maintain 20 feet distance from high tension lines, which run right here. So both the first and second level had to have like a bite taken out of them. We only lost 3 spaces on both levels, so a total of 6. We're in full compliance now with this, with the requirements that we stay within that certain distance from that. So if you're ever wondering, that's sort of what that looks like. Again, here's the Works, here's First, here's 48. Trying to make all the drawings face the same way. Second of all, I think this is important, and this goes back to what City Council approved and what the Historic Preservation worked on. When this Historic Preservation did their boundaries of where their design guidelines would apply, I think it was pretty important, certainly for my sanity, that the boundaries include the parking facility, and in 2023 will also include where the fire station's going. I know I'm going off target there for a second. So that means the full-fledged design would have to go in front of the city's Historic Preservation and Planning Commission. So our first rendering of the parking facility, this is what it looked like. Big city logo, fairly standard. What we were starting to hear from people was 2 things. Too much glass, doesn't fit in a historic district, looks like a Mike's Car Wash. This doesn't fit. And I got a funny feeling when it went in front of the Historic Preservation Planning Commission, it wasn't going to fit either. So I reached back out to Desmond, and ironically, and Kathy helped me find some, as I sent them pictures of what we thought it would be neat to look at, their reply was, we designed most of those, which we sort of thought, well, then why didn't you give us one of those designs? But I'm not picking on them. So from there, we started to transform into a more brick look, a look with the awnings. We removed some of the windows. Remember, this isn't necessary. We have to have a stairwell, and we have to have an elevator for handicap access. This is a necessity. You're not going to put it on this corner, or it defeats what the residents, and it's certainly not going to work out on 48. So by coming up with this new design, we were able to add a sort of a neater look. The awnings or something I think are pretty sharp. This is what we're hoping. Now that the access point isn't off First Street, this got to be pretty greened up here along First Street. Here's a perspective of what it would look like from State Route 48. This was if you're coming from Clayworks, for example, or coming from the railroad tracks. This is looking northwest. It's pretty simple design. It's only stairwells in that point, so handicap access would have to go towards First Street or towards this would be. So there's your access from the second level. Here's your pedestrian access from the first level here. This is a view coming down 48. Looking southwest gives you an idea of how there would be a right pull off and how you can access into the property from that standpoint. These are sort of hot off the presses. I just got these finished. So one of the questions that I have, and I hear it from a lot, and I really do get my share of emails and comments from people. I get walk-ins, and one of that is how's it going to fit? First and foremost, it's only 2 floors. I think that's really important to note, is that it's only 2 stories. I don't believe there was ever a thought, ever a hope that we were just going to sit there and stack level after level after level on this thing. And also, when you think about a 2-story parking garage, you got to remember it's like a home without a roof. It's a 2-story home without a roof. So this perspective gives you sort of an idea of where, if you were standing right along the gravel parking area, how that would fit in relation to this view here, which is from a perspective of the rail car, it's about in line with the wall of the first level of the second floor. These are true measurements. So that, I think, sort of gives you a perspective of how it fits in. It also shows you some of the greenery that would go in. That that recommendation from those residents to close down this First Street, it really is a winner, because not only to their benefit, but it allows this whole green space. And if you think about it, I don't ever envision that this is going to be a gated parking garage, for example. So it would be a park mobile, not a lot of infrastructure type of thing. So if you're stuck behind a train, this is sure going to make a lot more difficult for you to come flying through the city, because you now think you have a way to bypass the train. But I think this sort of gives you a perspective from a height standpoint. I hope it does. So I wanted to take that just a little step farther. So if you were standing rail car to your back, I just wanted to give you, no, granted, I'm sorry, these are before the windows, but same difference. So from ground level, from where you're standing to what is in line with where your wheels would be on the second floor, is exactly 12 feet. And then take that to the highest perspective, which is the roof of the stairwell. That's another 12 feet. So in total, that height would be 24 feet. This is just the elevator pit. This is what runs the elevator. So from first level, there's 128 parking spaces, 4 handicap parking spaces, 132. You'll lose a few on the first floor because you have this other access point. This is just a utility room. This a little bit of exhaust fan. This restroom is very simple. It has this parking garage has no restrooms. It's a very simple divide. This would house the inverter for the solar panels, for example. This is on the ground level, basically under the tunnel. It's a fairly standard utility room, lighting, control panels, and so on and so forth. Second level, 135, 9-foot stalls, 3 handicap stalls, 138 total. Brings you to a total of 270. I think over the course of time, I think we've lost about 10. I believe in the very, very beginning, we were around 280 in total spaces on that level. Second level is pretty standard. Drive up, one way up, stairwell, elevator, all handicap access, all handicap spaces, if you notice, are by code positioned near the steps and the elevator. Fairly standard. Stairwell down here to the level where you saw that guy walking out before, and then of course the corresponding cut. Done some green elements in here, and this, all we know, this is my last slide. We are obviously looking for I'm looking at sort of 2 types of solar panels. We're still calculating. There isn't a lot of electrical needs for this building. there's lighting and elevator. If we can get by with these roof-mounted ones, we sort of envision them being tucked on top of here. That's a potential. If Melnick, the company we're working with out of Milford, says that'll meet. The other option is to go with a drive-through, a drive-up that would cover approximately 10 stalls. I would see that sort of being over in this area here, least visibility. This could be expanded to cover the whole area, and because I know Kent's going to say it, and the whole city is. But right now, it's just dealing with the needs of the particular building, and then lastly, the monies that are available currently, sort of similar to what Corey talked about with the opioid money. There's quite a bit of money from the Volkswagen settlement towards these power charging stations. Misty was able to secure money for the city's first charging stations through the grant. So we know there's funding available to have these located wherever they would go, but these are becoming fairly standard. So I hope that sort of touches on just the design. Plan on moving forward in the future. I'm going to start talking, get Cindy in. I want to talk about some of the stormwater, some of those types of items. That would be the next meeting. I would have the city engineer would be here with me to help talk about it. But I hope that touched on the design. There's not a lot pizzazz to it, but I did want to show you that I think this particular look with the awnings, the darker brown, the more brick, less window, I think it's a little more appealing than the Mike's Car Wash look that we were getting. So that was all I had, Mayor, on that one. So,
All right, thank you. Any comments or questions? Mr. Butler?
Dave, the different design elements that you just showed us.
Yeah.
Did Desmond provide any cost estimate with regard to how much additional or less that would the new design elements would be?
they're going to put it in paper, but they thought that it was a bit of a wash between the bricks and the window replacement. There's really no change in State Route 48. There's not much of a change in look except those awnings, which are relatively inexpensive and will have to be maintained by the city, but it gives it that sort of that look. So I'm trying to figure out they're trying to help me figure out the difference between bricks and the window. So the negative of losing the windows plus the positive of considering the bricks. So I'll be getting that number.
And then the solar array, do we have an estimate of how much that would cost?
It's going to probably be less than what we played on the Public Works building because it has significantly less. So if you recall, the Public Works building solar array was $41,000 that would be paid back to the city by year 8. I think that this
Then pay us back again.
Yeah, then it pays us back because at times we're off the grid and we're actually putting money into the grid. Monica, who I work with, Melnick, is still trying to get a handle on what our electrical needs are in this building because they're very minor. But then again, we're on sort of all hands on deck down at the Public Works building because it's coming in and she's got to get. That's important for everybody to know our Public Works building. We're building a new Public Works building down on Loveland Madeira Road, and it's going to be completely and totally solar powered. So one of the first, obviously the first in the city. So I'll know soon on the cost and the bricks. And when Monica can give me a rough idea, I think we're going to find out that solar array only for the needs of that particular building is going to be around $30,000. And then they have that way of telling you when you'll pay yourself back. But it will make it, I just want, it can be done with not, I think they're just getting better and better at how they do this. The inverter would go in that room that down in the first floor. That's where the inverter would go. So that's all I had on that.
Any other comments or questions? Yes, Mr. Ping?
First of all, just wanted to thank Mr. Kennedy for putting together this presentation. I think it's very helpful to have all of this information out there for everyone to see and to be able to come to a better understanding of the ideas that you've been working on with it. One thing, just as a point of departure, I guess, is the need for handicap spaces on the second level. If you could just double check with with our consultant on that and make sure that's necessary.
Would they all go on the first? You think?
If you put them all on the first, it eliminates the elevator, and that's a $150,000
Okay.
line item. So
Okay.
ADA requires reasonable accommodation to handicapped people. There's nothing on the second level that's not on the first. So if the parking's on the first, they may not have a requirement. And so it may be something they're doing because they're used to doing it rather than it's a necessity. Might be worth looking into.
I will tell you that I realize that we have come across rules that, being from Illinois, that were different. For example, our detention basin, which is very common in the state of Ohio, look at any subdivision, where are a lot of the detention ponds? In that area where the high tension lines are, because no one wants to build a home there, which is where all the detention for the cities, for the parking facility would go, if it's ultimately approved, would be along there. And the guy from Illinois is like, that never happens up here. And I go, there's not a subdivision down here that's where they put the detention ponds, underneath the high tension wires. So you do find that codes, when you're dealing, as nice as it is dealing with these guys, they're very set in their head about the way things are in Chicago. So I'm learning that they said, oh, Dave, you're in a whole lot of trouble. I don't know how we're going to be able to put that detention pond over there. We contacted Duke, and they're like, yeah, you can put it under there. So that was, otherwise we're going to have to dig a massive tank. But it's so Kip might be 100% right when I call him tomorrow and say, hey, wait a second. Happen to have an engineer on board. He mentioned that, so I'll get with him tomorrow.
All right. Anyone else? Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Medler.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Before you this evening is the fourth quarter financial report for 2021. The report reflects income tax revenue being up 17.8% over 2020. Total income tax revenue for the year eclipsed $5 million for the first time in the city's history. Coming out of quarantine and COVID times, the Wellness Committee was able to be a little more active and encourage our employees to get out. And, I for one, use the trail, of course, during lunch times, but we're also able to get out to Perfect North to get some exercise and some much needed R&R. And I can report that there have been no broken bones so far from city employees for that. And as for the 17.8% income tax, obviously that's a very large increase. We don't see that as continuing. So far in the first quarter, it has been encouraging, a little bit up, but 20% revenue year over year, I don't think anybody's expecting that. So we're going to curb our enthusiasm a little bit going forward. General fund expenditures were up when compared to 2020. Largest driver was a property purchase in December, just down the road. Revenues in the city's enterprise funds finished modestly ahead of 2020's pace. As discussed previously, if the city had not adjusted minimum water usage amounts, we would have seen revenues below the 2020 numbers. And those are the high-level highlights for this.
All right. Anybody have any questions, comments? Mr. Butler?
Yeah, Mark, I'll go through these in order. I just have probably about 4 questions. Okay. With regard to the general fund, you just mentioned it's up 12.3%, as noted on page 112, and $280,000 of that from a property acquisition one-time, but expense. But even if you take that out, that's still up probably 8-9%, maybe. And then I just kind of a note in today's inflationary environment. I think we need to make a concerted effort to keep our expenses down. That's a pretty healthy increase. Now, granted, it was matched by a healthy increase in revenue, but as you noted, we're not counting on that continuing. And as we all see on the news every day, we expect the inflationary cycle to continue probably through 2022. So I think it's just as kind of a note on that regard. I have a couple questions about expenses on the checkbook, and maybe you could just tell me what they represent. On page 152 and 160, there's significant expenses to an item called GCWW. If you could just tell me what that is, I'm not sure what that is.
Greater Cincinnati Waterworks.
Oh, that's water.
Yes.
Okay, so that makes sense. And then on page 156, there's a $678,000 expense to U.S. Bank. Was that an investment vehicle or?
Let's see. Looking at the date, that's going to be our debt service payment.
Okay. And then the last question I have, and I'll just ask you to speculate, using your expertise. We also know that along with inflation, we know that the Fed is planning to increase interest rates probably 6 or 7 times this year.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, what do you anticipate that having an impact in terms of our interest income, one, but also borrowing expenses, two?
Sure. Start with interest income. So last summer, for example, we purchased a 2-year CD that was returning 0.35% interest. So checking today, the same item would be closer to 1.75 and 2%.
Okay.
So we have a great deal of money that's hanging out in the Star Ohio account, and we have some other CDs. Right now, we're keeping things on the shorter term. We just issued a CD for about 6 months because we're still kind of thinking, well, if interest rates are going to be raised pretty soon, we don't really want to lock things in for a few years right now when in 6 months maybe we'll get a lot better. So we're going to work with the finance commission and our investment committee just to try to figure out, okay, when's it going to peak and when's going to be the best time to pull the trigger. And as to expenses, sure, in this case for investments, high interest is helping you. When you're going out for debt, high interest is going to hurt you. So we'll definitely keep an eye on that as well.
And in the municipal bond, if we do float bonds, is it generally, in your experience, a 1-to-1 ratio in terms of interest rates that the Fed increases and municipal bond rates? Do they follow pretty much in tandem?
I think as one rises, the other might as well. I'm not sure about if one goes up 1%, if the other goes up 1%. I'm not sure about that.
Okay.
And it also depends on who's out there buying bonds. So if there's a lot of people looking to invest, then they might be a little more competitive and the rates won't be quite as high. But if there's just one person out there willing to buy the bonds, then we'll kind of be at their mercy.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? All right. I think we need a motion to adopt your quarterly update, correct?
Motion to adopt the 21 quarterly update,
Second.
4th quarter.
Thank you. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Ping,
Yes.
Mayor Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Bateman,
Yes.
Mr. Blair,
Yes.
Mr. Butler,
Yes.
Mr. Hart,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
All right. Next is your income tax update, which is on page 221.
Sure. As discussed, income tax revenue were up and saw increases in all 3 categories, which are withholdings, businesses, and individuals. Again, as we believe we'll have another strong year, 8% probably isn't going to happen. We'll have a better idea on the trends as the first quarter continues.
All right. Anybody have any comments or questions on this report? All right. Thank you, Mr. Medler. There are various committee minutes and reports in the packet. Does anybody have any comments on those? All right. Anything for city council reports and comments? Mr. Butler?
Yeah, I just I want to note that on March 17th, the Planning and Zoning Committee met to consider the SPD application for the recently annexed Grailville property. And I had the opportunity to attend that meeting and public hearing, and I first off want to commend the Planning and Zoning Committee. I thought they conducted a very fair and reasonable review of giving both the applicant and the citizens an opportunity to present their thoughts about the proposal. If you haven't had the opportunity to see that hearing, I would urge my colleagues to watch that on the city's website. There were 20 citizens who spoke at that hearing, and I think if you watch that, and those who attended, including our colleague Andy Bateman, those citizens, I think, spoke very intelligently. They were prepared, very respectful, And I do want to thank those citizens who participated in that process. If you watched it, you'll note a uniform concern expressed at that meeting was the issue of congestion and traffic in downtown. And we are taking a positive step toward addressing this congestion with the purchase of the mobile station and beginning the process of creating a turn lane for drivers coming into the downtown area from Route 48. And certainly efforts that we are making with the bike path crossing signal is also another good step towards addressing traffic and congestion. But I think what that hearing reinforced to me, and I hope anybody who watched it or participated or was there, is that our city has a surplus of creative and intelligent people who want to help solve the problem in a positive way. And I know we've discussed the idea of a committee to address traffic and congestion, and at least so far, we have not gone in that direction. But I again want to ask my colleagues to keep an open mind about inviting citizens to help create a solution to this area of concern. I urge us to continue to reach out to our community, identify those who can help corroborate on solutions, perhaps even have a town hall on traffic and congestion in downtown. I think we can do more. We've done a lot. We can do more, and we must do more, because clearly this is a primary concern of our citizens. And I'm optimistic after attending that meeting that we have the wisdom and the solutions, or the individuals that can help us find solutions to this issue, which has vexed our city now for decades. So again, I want to congratulate Planning and Zoning. I thought they conducted a very good hearing, and I know that the process is continuing. I don't want to take any. I don't know if Andy wanted to address it as well, but you know, like I said, very well done, and I thought very positive hearing, an opportunity for people to present their views.
Anyone else have anything?
Well,
Yes, Mr. Bateman.
I'll just jump in and add my own first-person account from the outcome of the March 17th P&Z meeting. I think one of the things, just as a general update, is that as a result of the public hearing and the presentation from the applicant, as well as the remarks from residents, one of the outcomes of that meeting was that the city would pursue an independent traffic study. While a traffic study is not required at this time as part of the P&Z application, I think it will allow us to get a better sense of the impacts that potential development in the newly annexed portion of Loveland. So I think that to Mr. Butler's point of how we continue to make incremental adjustments and studies of you know, in some cases a moving target, considering a lot of the development that's already underway up in Warren County, as well as you know, evaluating what impact development will have in Clermont County. So that's going to be the, you know, part of the next step, and I believe we committed a date of May 4th, in which case we would reconvene that that analysis. So I just again, I think that the public came forward in large numbers, as Mr. Butler said, and I think the my colleagues on Planning and Zoning, as well as the staff, you know, conducted themselves with great integrity, and we're moving forward in terms of following the process. And so we'll continue to update as needed. But I appreciate the compliments and confidence from Mr. Butler with regards to the P&Z hearing.
All right. I was not present at that meeting, but I did. Well, yes.
I'm sorry, just one point of clarification. I understood from the meeting that it's not over. It was
correct.
Continued, correct? So
No
it's
decision
still,
has been made.
it's right, but it's still an ongoing meeting. It's just delayed for a period of time, right? So, okay. So I mean, it's that there have been no formal closures to it. That there's still opportunities for citizens to come and present and so forth. Okay, thank you.
So I wasn't present at the meeting, but I did watch it live that evening from start to finish. And what really struck me watching it was I was very proud that many citizens took time out of their St. Patrick's revelry to spend 2.5 hours in these chambers because they had such passion about what may go on that property. I thought that was fantastic. And I agree, they comported themselves very well during that meeting. And the other thing that struck me is I was very thankful that this debate was taking place in these chambers and not in Miami Township's chambers. I'm very glad that we annexed it and that we get to make this decision and that our citizens who it affects the most are actually in a position to come and tell us what they think instead of hoping Miami Township listens to them. So I thought it was a very good meeting all around. I think the commission handled themselves very well, as did our citizens. I was proud of everybody and how they comported themselves that night. Does anyone else have anything? I attended and spoke at the Troop 55 Eagle Court of Honor this past Saturday. This is a troop that's based out of St. Columbin, and 6 young men were awarded became Eagle Scouts that day in a ceremony. They're all from Loveland, obviously, so I'd like to mention their names. Sam Klein was one. John Iha, who did the Hill Wagner Cemetery cleanup, which is in the city of Loveland. Scott Mendoza, who his project was the Mary Garden Outdoor Chapel Restoration, which is on St. Columban grounds in Loveland. Chris Pruitt, his project was a pollinator garden bat house installation at Phillips Park. Josiah Soberano, and then Andy Warpenberg, who had trail improvements and bench and rail installation, which at the time may not have been, but now is in Loveland because it's on the Grailville property. So they were truly 6 remarkable young men. So that was an honor to attend that. Anyone else have anything? We have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.